Hello. Hi, Katlego.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. So I'm going to say good afternoon to everyone and welcome to my living room. This is a talk show series where I will be having conversations with different people from different walks of life with the hope that their stories or their life journeys will inspire other people out there. I know that sometimes we tend to focus on inspiring young girls only, but I don't want us to forget about the boy child. So I'm happy that you are here, uh, blessing my living room. And, I want men also on the show so that we can encourage both women and men. So today we're having a conversation with my little brother, my friend, my former office mate, Dr. Katlego Sojane. So welcome and thank you for making time.
Hi, it's good to be here and it's good to see you. It's been a while. And I'm hoping that our conversation might, help someone figure out what they want to do with their life and maybe even motivate them to work harder if they've already chosen a particular path.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's talk about how we met. So you and I met, I don't know, back in 2013 or 2014. I can't remember, during grad school in South Africa. I remember the very first time when we came to Durban for your interview. I don't know if you remember that day. You probably don't. And I was like, oh, hello. I saw this little boy and I was like, is he really sure that he wants to do a PhD? But eventually you came to Durban, we shared an office, you came to my office and you came across as this very young, bright mind, very smart, very inquisitive. And we quickly bonded, you became one of my little brothers and the rest is history, We celebrated a lot of things, even outside of work, our birthdays, families, we had a good time and I'm really grateful that we still have this bond. But before we go any further, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself. Who is Katlego?
Katlego is a Joburger. I grew up in Diepkloof, Zone 3, also known as 985. But I also grew up partially in the southern suburbs of Johannesburg. So most of my early life has been from Johannesburg. And it was only when I finished my undergrad honors and master's degree that I felt that, okay, maybe I need change. Why not go to my favorite holiday destination and stay there and even work? So that's how I got to Durban, and that's how we got to meet.
Yeah, well, it's really nice. Tell me
But
about,
more than
yeah,
anything, my
sorry.
family structure is very basic. I come from a small family. I have a younger sister. Um, she was she's about 25 now,
Wow, she's long.
and my mom, dad, uh, yeah, so very small family, just very tight knit, and spend a lot of time with my mom's side of the family. They, raised me, you know, spend a lot of time raising me, but I did have strong connections as well on my father's side of the family.
Yeah. And what do you do currently? What do you do for a living?
So during my PhD, I got hired by the University of KwaZulu-Natal to be a lecturer. So I was doing my PhD and teaching simultaneously. And when I finished my PhD in 2018, I continued with that work. Except now my responsibilities grew. So I took on students who I supervise, and I also have other administrative responsibilities with the university, as well as the lab work that I also perform.
Mhm. Yeah, this is really interesting. I can't imagine you having students that you supervise because to me, you are still that young boy, young man, my little brother. So I'm really happy to see that you've grown and you've become this very, responsible scientist and educator as well. So I'm really proud of you. So I'm going to take you a little bit back from a little bit back to when you were growing up. who inspired you to be who you are today?
It really came from myself, because in my circle that I grew up in, most of my friends, they had other interests. And in my community, science wasn't something that people pursued as a career. But my curiosity made me investigate what exactly it is that I could do with my life. And when I looked at the fact that I really love biology and I really love chemistry, it just made sense to choose a career that incorporated both subjects. So biochemistry was just, it just made sense to me to pursue. And then I coupled biochemistry with microbiology, because at the time I could only choose between microbiology and genetics as a major. So I just went with microbiology, and I told myself that later on I would incorporate the genetics somewhere in my studies.
Yeah, so I know that you started off with biochemistry, but for your PhD, you sort of switched or transitioned to virology. Why?
Yeah.
What made you choose this path of moving to virology from biochemistry?
Yeah, so during my master's, the focus of my master's project was to try and make antibody-like molecules that would target HIV and neutralize it. So that project was based on a bit of genetic engineering and drug design. And when I finished that project, I realized that it's all good and well to be able to make the drugs, but if you don't understand, very well the targets of those drugs, then those drugs are not going to be very effective.
Yeah.
So I decided to then shift temporarily to pathogenesis work. And because initially I was making drugs against HIV, I thought, well, let me just continue on and understand this very complex virus that still eludes us today. We don't have a cure or vaccine against it. So I thought, let me, divert some of my attention to understanding how the virus functions. And then that might help me with designing therapeutics against it.
Yeah, yeah. So that's going to bring us to talking about your PhD project. Like, obviously, you used some of your experiences and ideas to develop a research question for your PhD. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what your PhD work was all about?
Yes. So when people who are living with HIV don't have adequate antiretroviral therapy, they can progress to developing AIDS. And when they reach that stage, the body also tends to have to fight opportunistic infections. So our university had a cohort of people who were living with HIV but had progressed to developing cryptococcal meningitis, which is an opportunistic infection that's initiated by Cryptococcus neoformans, which is a fungus. And this fungus can move through the body and reach the brain, where it can cause all sorts of neurological problems. So the focus of my PhD was to try and look at viruses that were circulating in the blood as well as in the cerebrospinal fluid, which circulates in the central nervous system, to see whether the viral populations in the two different parts of the body are the same or if they're different, and how possible is it to target them with available antiretroviral therapies.
That's exciting. That's a very exciting project. So I know that you are from Johannesburg, and obviously you decided to move to Durban, which was usually your holiday destination. But Johannesburg and Durban are two very different places. So how did you find, moving now, living in Durban as opposed to living in Johannesburg? Did you have any difficulties transitioning to, during that move?
Fortunately, the transition wasn't too difficult for me. um, my father had he had this belief that we need to travel widely and, leave home and go as far as we can, learn about other people and other cultures. So I'd seen the country a lot. I'd been all over the country, and I wasn't afraid to travel. I was motivated to move and to be independent and see if I can stand on my own 2 feet for a while. So when I moved to Durban, I was very excited. I was ready for the challenge. I knew a bit of the language because Johannesburg is a very cosmopolitan city and you're bound to learn a myriad of languages. So when I got to Durban, I quickly made friends, including you. I had new patterns and new, uh, programs that just kind of worked, and I was happy to stay in Durban, and I'm still here in Durban. I would say the only difficult thing was being away from most of my friends and family who are in Johannesburg. And it's not always easy to travel back to Johannesburg regularly to visit. Other than that, I would say that is the most challenging part about living away from Johannesburg.
During your PhD studies or stay in Durban, did you have any challenges? Can you tell us about any problems you encountered during your studies, personal or professional, and how you overcame those challenges?
Again, I would just say the challenge is being away from friends and family who, maybe going through difficult times themselves. Sometimes people in the family pass away or they go through their own personal challenges. And when you're away and you're not able to support them, it can eat away at you. So you have to find mechanisms to deal with the challenge of not being close to the people that you love and not being able to support them physically. You have to do it electronically or some other way.
Yeah, that's interesting. So we're going to take a short break. So welcome back. We took like a little pause just to drink water. So let's talk about, obviously, you started being an employee of the university during your PhD, right? So you were hired as a developmental lecturer, and then you finished your PhD, and then you became a full-on lecturer. So tell me about the transition, from being a full-time student as well as being that developmental, because your work became too much, So how did you transition from being a student, a lecturer, and a full lecturer?
The scheduling was difficult because you have to allocate some time in the day to teaching, marking, preparing assessments, and also planning your lab work, analyzing your data, and all the while trying to find some time to take care of your body by exercising or socializing with people so that you don't get too invested in work and let go of yourself physically. But I would say because I really love teaching, it wasn't too much of a burden on me. I just found ways to schedule appropriately, rest appropriately, as well as continue with the science, which I was really interested in.
So what is your research focus on right now?
So my PhD was largely focused on looking at DNA sequences of HIV viruses in the blood as well as the central nervous system. And now my focus is to take those DNA sequences to clone them into expression plasmids and then recreate some of the viruses which we observed in the participants that we were studying. And then we can, in a controlled setting, understand how the virus gets into different host cells. with the aim that if we understand how the virus gets into different host cells, we can design strategies to block the virus from getting into those host cells.
Yeah. So how many, I know you spoke about supervising students. How many students do you have? Like, is it masters or PhD students?
So annually, I have one honors student, and I recruited my first master's student at the end of last year. No, I lie. At the beginning of last year. I had a second master's student, but they deregistered during the national lockdowns that were introduced because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So I still only have one master's student and a new honors student.
Yeah. Okay. So I know you spoke about, coping with work and scheduling and all of that. And you are also a father to my very beautiful godson. So how do you juggle your schedule with family, being a fantastic father that you are, and also doing so great at your job?
My son, he motivates me to work hard, and he motivates me to do the best that I can so I can provide the most that I can for him. It is difficult. He's still very young. He's approaching 2 years old. And there are challenges with dealing with a child who can't communicate, verbally very well. And you have to find other means to communicate with him. So there are days where you're very frustrated because he's acting out, and you're trying your best to control your temper. And also when they are that young and they go to creche like he does, they tend to get sick, quite a bit, because they tend to use their hands, feet, and mouths a lot to, touch things, and he can pick up certain things that make him sick. And when he gets sick, you have to allocate some time off work so you can look after him and work from home as best as you can. So it does get challenging when you do have a family and you realize that because you have a family, you have to manage your work life and your family life very well, and you have to balance it very well so that the two don't suffer.
Yeah. So he's almost 2 years old. That means I haven't seen you for 2 years. Because
That
the last
long.
time I saw you, he was not born yet. So it's been a long time. Huh?
But yeah, my fiance helps me so much with taking care of my son, and she's wonderful. She's incredible, and we share the load very well. So there's never a time where I feel like I'm doing too much. They make sure that, they help me a lot with taking care of our son.
That's really nice to hear. I like that you are also very hands-on because your fiance is also an aspiring scientist. So I love what I'm hearing, because as women, we tend to need a lot more support in terms of, housework and taking care of children and things like that. So I like how you're giving her all the support that she needs as well. And also recognizing that he's also your son, you have to be responsible. So I like that. So
Definitely.
yeah, obviously I know you are a very happy person, you love what you do, and I really think your story is really inspiring to a lot of people. I want to know if you have any regrets in life.
Regrets I don't have. I do have moments where I think about what would have happened if, if I took a different turn in the road. But I don't remember the poet, but there's a line where they say roads lead upon roads, and you can't always go back because the deviations that you always take in life allow you to only go in a way that never allows you to go backwards. So I just try and learn from the the experiences that I've had in the past, try and learn from other people's experiences as well, and just try and make decisions that, you know, make me happy, as well as don't destabilize my loved ones too much.
Yeah, yeah. What can you say to your younger self, or what can you say to young people out there who may be interested in following your footsteps or your career path?
To my younger self, I would say I'm proud that you stuck to your guns. You told yourself that you wanted to follow a career in science, and you proved that it's possible to do it, especially when science wasn't your strongest subject growing up. To others, I would say keep focused and be committed to your plan. Because when things distract you from your plan, when you don't invest the time that you need to in your plan and develop yourself adequately for that plan, you're going to make the road very hard for you to get what you want. And you might even fall off that path and end up doing something else that you may not really want to do. So I'd say focus and commitment are very important things to have when you want to reach a particular goal.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. So the last question that I'm going to ask you is something that I ask everyone that comes to my living room. It's about the pandemic and how COVID-19 has affected or is affecting your work, your life in general. And what is your coping strategy?
So the pandemic has, you know, on the work side has chewed away a lot of time because the lockdowns kept us out of the lab for many, many months. It meant that we were unable to be productive and to have a lot of research results that are not only important for us to continue our work, but that can be impactful for the communities that we serve. It's also been difficult to motivate for research funds, especially when, you know, there wasn't a lot of laboratory activity that you could achieve. So I'd say it's created a lot of uncertainty and worry about the future, especially on my side as an emerging academic, where you're trying to gain momentum and you're trying to establish yourself as a scientist. You're trying to publish as much as you can, but the pandemic really made it hard to gain that momentum and to feel like, you know, there's certainty in the near future about the funds that you're going to get to pursue the studies that you need to. So I would say the best way that I've coped was to just try and develop myself in the meantime, to read a lot around my research field, to try and come up with projects, to have solid ideas, to just really plan for a time when I could get back into the lab. And then also try and focus on my family as much as I can, be invested in developing them while I can spend more time with them.
Yeah, yeah, that is absolutely amazing. So this brings us to the end of our conversation. I really want to thank you for blessing my living room today. I really appreciate you, Katlego, as a friend, as a brother, and I wish you all the very best. I'm very proud of you, and I'm proud of your achievements. I'm proud of your family as well, and I wish you well. I believe that your story will inspire many people out there. And thank you, and be blessed. Sending you love and light.
It was great. I love your show, and I'm hoping that, you know, it grows.
Thank you. I hope so too. I hope that we can cover as many normal people like you and I, so we can inspire as many, many people as we can, because that's the whole idea. But thank you for your time. Bye,
For
Kat.
sure. Bye. Bye-bye.